Ramana says, every morning when you wake up, before you even open your eyes, there is a brief, silent moment, a space before the world rushes in. That stillness, that effortless awareness is your true nature. But the mind quickly begins to whisper, I must get up. I have work to do. I am late. And with that simple thought, the whole world of separation begins again. Ramana Maharshi called this root thought the I thought. He said, every thought arises only after the thought I. Therefore, the inquiry, who am I, is the destruction of all thoughts. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but this simplicity hides the deepest truth of all. To practice self-inquiry is not to sit in a cave or to run away from life. It is to meet life from the very center of being. When you feel anger, stop and ask, to whom has this anger arisen? Immediately the answer comes, to me. Then Ramana says, go deeper. Who am I? Not as a philosophical question, not as something to be answered with words, but as a living flame of attention turning inward. In that very act of turning, something miraculous happens. The energy that was rushing outward, judging, comparing, reacting, begins to return to its source. You do not need to suppress the emotion. You simply trace it back to its root. And what do you find there? Only a quiet, open presence, the pure awareness in which everything appears and disappears. Self-inquiry is not a mantra to repeat mechanically. It is not a belief. It is not even a meditation technique in the ordinary sense. It is a return, a homecoming to what you have never truly left. When Ramana was asked, can a person practice self-inquiry while engaged in daily work? He smiled and said, why not? The mind, having been trained to return to its source, will naturally do so, even while engaged in activity. This means you can practice self-inquiry while walking, cooking, driving, speaking, even in the middle of chaos. Because it is not about outer silence, it is about inner attention. When you speak to someone, watch who is speaking. When you listen, who is listening? Behind every movement of the body, every word of the mouth, every flicker of thought, there is a witnessing presence. That witness is not separate from you. It is you. As you begin to live this inquiry, you notice that daily life itself becomes a meditation. Every challenge becomes a doorway to awareness. Every irritation becomes an invitation to return home. Even the most ordinary moments, sipping tea, hearing the sound of rain, feeling the breath move in and out, become luminous with presence. You start to see that there is no such thing as a worldly life and a spiritual life. There's only life and the awareness that knows it. Ramana's path dissolves the false division between the seeker and the sought, between the one who prays and the one who is prayed to. When you sit quietly, ask sincerely, who am I? Let every answer that arises, I am this body, I am this profession, I am this name, I am this story, be seen as a thought. And then ask again, who sees this thought? Each time you look, the mind falls silent for a moment. That silence is not emptiness, it is fullness itself. The I that you thought you were begins to fade into something vast, intimate, and boundless. This is the living practice Ramana pointed to, not an escape from life, but the discovery of freedom in the midst of it. Freedom not as an idea, but as the direct knowing that you are never bound. The beauty of this path is that it requires no outer form, no belief, no initiation. It requires only sincerity. Every time you remember, you can turn within. Even if you forget 1,000 times a day, each time you remember is a fresh awakening. Ramana used to say, the self is like a pearl buried in oyster shell at the bottom of the sea. Dive deep within yourself, and you will find it. But the diving he spoke of is not physical. It is the inward movement of attention. As you dive deeper, thoughts lose their grip. Desires, fears, and worries appear like shadows that cannot stand the light of pure awareness. You begin to taste a peace that does not depend on anything, not on success or failure, not on praise or blame. This peace is always present. It is not something to be achieved. It is your natural state. But because the mind is constantly wandering, you overlook it. Self-inquiry simply reveals what was already there. And daily life begins small. When you wake up, instead of immediately reaching for the phone or the mind's checklist, pause and ask gently, who woke up? When you feel overwhelmed, pause and ask, who is feeling this? Let the question open you, not close you. Don't look for an intellectual answer. Feel into the stillness behind the question. That stillness is the answer. Over time, you will see that the question, who am I, begins to dissolve itself. It is like a stick used to stir the funeral pyre. In the end, it too is consumed by the fire of awareness. What remains is pure being, silent, luminous, effortless. Ramana Maharshi once said, "Be still and know that you are that." This is the ultimate teaching. The stillness he speaks of is not an action. It is the stillness of the heart that no longer chases anything outside itself. And so, in the midst of your day, whenever you remember, turn inward for a moment. Even one breath of self-remembrance changes everything. It is like opening a window in a stuffy room. Suddenly, light and freshness pour in. You begin to live from a different place, from the center of being rather than the surface of becoming. Life continues, work, relationships, challenges, but they no longer disturb your depth. You become like the sky, vast, untouched, while clouds come and go. This is what it means to practice self-inquiry in daily life. Not to withdraw from the world, but to meet the world from silence. To walk, to speak, to love, yet never lose the sense of being. To live in the world as a free being, awake, aware, and at peace.